Hello. Today I would like to have a little chat about training in the heat. So we've done a lot of chats before, and you'll see a lot of articles on my site about climatizing to the heat to go to races and preparation for hot races. So we've done a lot of talks on that and a lot of articles on that. And today I want to touch on a little bit different subject, more so talking about when you live in a really hot place, or as we come into the summer months. I'm getting notes now from athletes. It's now 90 degrees, 100 degrees, high humidity starting to roll into the summer months. And so we know what it looks like to, if you're at home training and it's a little bit cooler, and then we're preparing for a hot race, and we talk about race strategies and nutrition for hot races and how to handle racing in the heat a lot. But more, I want to talk about the cumulative effect of training in the heat day in and day out. And this is a ginormous topic, so I'm not going to cover everything today, but I just want to touch on a few things. And I really want to zero in on the idea of the cumulative effect of training in the heat. And some of the big mistakes I see athletes make when they transition from the colder weather into the hotter weather. The number one thing is mentally being able to adjust to the paces that you're now going to have to adjust to. So a common mistake is athletes will, they get used to certain efforts and seeing a certain wattage on their bike or a certain pace on the run for that effort. And they get really stuck on that. They think, I have to hit these paces, I have to hit these watts, and even though temperature is going up, they're bound and determined to stick to those paces and those efforts. Now, if you wear heart rate along with, as you watch pace and watts on your bike, you'll see that heart rate is going to start to run higher and higher. And I call this the engine's overheating. So it's really, really important mentally, as soon as the temperatures start to go up, just settle up with the fact that you're going to have to slow down a little bit, or your effort's going to have to be a little bit less. Because if the engine keeps overheating, getting hotter and hotter, eventually it's just like a car, it's going to overheat, and you're going to be succumbed to having to slow way down and cool yourself off and get the engine cooled off. And oftentimes that's when you'll see, even in races, we experience this, and those are some of the things we've talked about. If you don't take notice of those things and slow down, eventually, it forces you to come to a crawl. So that's the first thing, is as the temperatures start to heat up, absolutely adjusting what your expectations are in relationship to how hot it is, how humid it is, what your pace is, and what your watts are. And then we want to talk about the cumulative effect of that. So if you're out there every day and you know that every day now you're getting a little bit, dehydration is a bit more of a factor, you're exposed to the sun a little bit more, is there a chance of any kind of heat stroke or sunstroke on a day-to-day basis? So for example, if you're training here in Arizona, where it's between 100 and 105 degrees every single day, and you're out there, say, an hour up to 3-4 hours every day, and you're just dealing with that heat stress every day, that's going to have to be taken into account for your overall training program and recovery. How much your sessions take out of you when you're out there in that kind of heat. For a week, it's okay. 2 weeks, it's okay. 3 weeks, it might even be okay. And then you might be thinking, well, then eventually you adapt to the heat. Yes, you do adapt to the heat, but also that heat stress, it's cumulative, and there's a fatigue effect to that. And so making sure that when you're not actually training, you're staying really cool. When you are out there training, stopping often for water, ice, taking care of yourself when you're not out there training, making sure that your living environment is cool, that you're staying rehydrated, you're staying on top of your electrolytes. All of these things are going to really matter. And you're probably going to need a lot more sleep. You're going to be more tired, a little bit more beat up from your sessions, from being in the heat. The larger the athlete you are, or the more heavier your sweat rate is, the more the heat's going to have an impact on you day to day. So again, a week might not be a big deal, a few days, even 3 weeks, but if you start to add it up over weeks, months, 3 months, 4 months of this kind of heat stress, it can really start to beat an athlete down. So you're really paying attention to this day in and day out. In addition to that, if you are in a really hot place, you're probably trying to get up really early every day to beat the heat. Really early morning rises, 4 a.m., 4:30, day in, day out, trying to beat the heat. That's going to have an effect on your overall recovery and how you're able to handle the sessions. So take all that into account as you're planning your training out. Can we still get fit in the heat? And when I say fit, that means we know that in order to improve, we need to address intervals and we need to go fast sometimes. Now, if it's really hot and we know that we have to back off every time it's really hot, we're not able to hit those high efforts because it is very warm. Are we over 3-4 months chronically going to end up being just a little bit slower than we would be if we're able to go somewhere where it's a little cooler? And I'm talking about the really hot places. So if you're living in an environment where it's above 95 degrees every single day, and you're really having to dial back the effort every day just to accommodate for the heat, are we going to be able to reach a fitness level that is at your best performance in this kind of heat? I think it's tough. I definitely think it's tough. I think, you're going to have to plan for your interval sessions to be in the coolest part of the day as possible, so whether it's really early or perhaps just like the winter months when you have to train indoors, maybe this is a time you say, okay, for the really, really hard stuff, I'm actually going to stay indoors in the air conditioning and be able to hit those high notes, elevate heart rate and effort and watts or pace on the treadmill, and not worry about overheating. You've got a fan on you, air conditioning, access to cold water and ice, maybe even some cold towels, those kinds of things, so that you're actually able to hit the intensity that you need to continue to improve your performance. And then your other sessions where they're maybe a little bit more dialed back, whether it be, your tempo efforts or your long endurance efforts, okay, those are going to be a touch slower outside, but that's okay because they're not meant to be super high intensity. So some planning like that can play a big part. And, I think is important to address. If you live in a really, really hot place and you're looking for getting fitter and fitter in terms of performance with intervals and increasing fitness, is it where you plan those within your week, within your recovery, how tired you are from the cumulative heat and the depletion, and is it wise to stay inside for those? And maybe if you live in a really hot place, when races do come back, you plan them so that they're away from your hot season. So here in a place where it's 100 degrees all summer, we wouldn't necessarily expect to come into race form out of 100 degrees after 3 months of training in this kind of weather. We would say, okay, let's either go away somewhere cool or we'll plan our A races out of the winter season when it's much more temperate conditions. So all some things to think about as you approach the hotter summer months. Stay cool when you're not training. Stay on top of replacing anything that you're depleting when you're out there. Consider your high intensity sessions indoors in the air conditioning. And, really look at more sleep, more recovery, and planning how hard you can go and dialing back those efforts to accommodate for the heat and humidity. Hopefully this helps you guys out, and we will talk to you soon. Cheers.